continuing on in Chapter 5. Now we're going to cover a portion of Section 5.3. Mainly I'm going to be just doing Project 5.3, the first two parts of it, or maybe even the first three parts of it, depending on how we do on time. Okay. So now I've introduced you to the concept of sketches and how it saves us some time. And let's continue on in discussing sketches. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new sketch. I'm going to leave everything the same. Again, we have the plane that our sketch is going to be drawn on, and let me change our view so we can see it. Whenever we draw a sketch, one of the benefits of drawing a sketch is that it allows us to set what are called constraints. And constraints is basically a rule that the shape that we've designed has to follow. And one of the things I'm going to show you are the degree of freedom indicators. So when a sketch is fully constrained, the sketch will no longer have the degree of freedom indicators. So we can set geometric constraints, we can set dimension constraints, and I'm going to show you how to do some of those here. So let's go ahead and draw a shape. Let's draw a shape seen in figure or in project 5.3.1. I'm just going to draw, and again I just hit the profile. I started a new sketch and I hit the profile button. Say something like this, and then it comes up. Something like this. So I'm not going to close this. It's going to look something like this. Let's introduce also a new function while we can. Let's go ahead and introduce this fillet function. So I'm going to go ahead and select the fillet function. It's this rounded edge here. And you see that it's going to trim the edges whenever I select. And let me show you what we do here. So I'm going to select one end of this. I'm going to select the other end of this particular line. And you see here we have a arc that appears. And right now the arc is set at 13. I can move it and it will adjust to whatever size I want. Let me leave it at 13 and I'm just going to left click. So now that I've left click, it's trimmed the corner and it's now left me with this rounded arc. Okay, that's just the fillet. So you guys can play with that to make these rounded shapes on the corners of these objects. Okay. What I'm going to show you now is called the fixed constraint. It's a geometric constraint. And our constraints are going to be accessible to us through this bottom menu. So it's like two parallel lines and then the perpendicular lines also. So let's go ahead and click that. And you see, immediately when I click it, we have these red lines that appear out of the points. These red lines are degree of freedom indicators. So that's telling me that this particular segment can move up and down, left and right. So if I unclick the constraint menu, and let's say I want to move this up and down, I can adjust the size of this however I want right now because I don't have any constraints on there. We're able to move this object however we like. So once I select the constraints, you can see these degree of freedom indicators. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this bottom line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our constraint option and I'm going to select the fixed constraint option. So when I select fixed constraint, so I'll left click this fixed constraint, you see that both of the indicators that allow me to move this object up and down are no longer there. So let's try to move it up and down. We can't. Try to move it left and right. You can still move it left and right. If you want to get rid of the left and right movement, let's go ahead and click this horizontal line, and we'll say that we want this phase. We can click this horizontal line, we want this phase. So now you'll notice that this segment of the geometry that we have is now fixed. We cannot adjust or move this line left or right or up or down. You can also remove these constraints. And the next one I want to show you is the coincident constraint on time. So what we're going to do is we're going to select a couple points. Now keep in mind I'm selecting the end point of these geometries. So let me pick this endpoint. So when I hover over this line, you see at the end there's a brown circle. That's the endpoint. I'm going to go ahead and click that endpoint. Let me make sure I have my constraint icon selected first. So I'm going to select my constraint icon. Go ahead and do that. I'm going to select the endpoint. I'm going to select this other endpoint. And you see we have a new option that's come up. Let's go ahead and click that option. And you'll see that the 2 points that we have that were not joined are now joined. And let's go ahead and unclick our constraint option. And so now we have a closed object. So in the future, if you have something that you want to change or something that's open like that, you can always change it using this type of option. So there's a couple of examples of some constraints. Let me show you an example now of some horizontal and vertical geometrical constraints. So let me go ahead and just click Finish the Sketch. There's the sketch that we just did. Let's go ahead and now move on to the next project. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw an object that's similar to what we see in the book right now. So let me just draw something. You can draw something similar. Just draw it like this, and draw something like this. Okay. So let me go ahead and you can. What I'm doing is I'm right-clicking on the desktop here, and then you click Hand. I'll grab my little hand and I'll left-click and just scroll the screen over so we can have it in the center of our screen. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to select the constraint on this particular object. Click it. Now the constraint I want to set, let me go ahead and click it. I'm going to click my constraint button, and I'm going to go ahead and select, let's say, these 2 lines. Now that I've selected those 2 lines, I have several different more options that have appeared in my menu. I'm going to click that I want it to be a vertical constraint. So I'm saying the rule that these 2 lines have to follow is that these lines need to be vertical. So let me go ahead and click that. And you see that our shape adjusts to meet that constraint. Let me now select the rest of these lines. And I want to select them, so I'll select all 3. I'm going to put the constraint for these 2 lines to be horizontal. So now you see you have another tool to use to help you to make your lines straighter. So for some of you who are doing your exercises in class, you notice that you may not have a perfectly straight line, or maybe sometimes it may be difficult to have a straight line. Well, now you have a tool to help you make something perfectly vertical or horizontal in your drawing. I'm going to go ahead and save our next lesson for the next lecture, and in that lecture I'm going to cover the point on curve constraint, and we'll move on to some others and as we finish off chapter 5.